Hello and welcome to Android Masterclass by Architect a Startup Solution. This is the second part of the job scheduler tutorial. In this task, we will implement the job conditions. So now that you have your job service, it's time to identify the criteria for running the job. For this, use the JobInfo component. You will create a series of parameterized conditions for running a job using a variety of network connectivity types and device status. So to begin, you need to create a group of radio buttons to create a network type that this job requires. So implement the network constraint. One possible condition for running a job is the status of the device's network connection. You can limit the job service so that it executes only when the network conditions are met. There are basically three options. First is the network type none, then the network type any, and then the network type unmetered. Okay, basically the first one means that the job will run with or without a network connection. That is a default value. And for the type any means that the job will run as long as the network, that is the cellular or the Wi-Fi, is available. And the third one, that is the type unmetered, means that the job will run as long as the device is connected to Wi-Fi that does not use a hotspot. So in order to create a layout for your app layout includes the radio button with which the user chooses the network criteria. We need to implement the steps in the activity main.xml file and make sure to extract all the dimensions and the string resources. So let's just go to the activity main.xml and just change the layout to, let's say, linear layout. I'll say here linear layout. After that, give the layout a padding of, let's say, 16 dB. So here I'll say padding, I'll add the 16 dB over here. Then you might get a few errors or something, then you can fix it by yourself. After that, what I need to do is to change the text view. Okay, so let's just change the, so width and height would be wrap content only, and let's just change the text over here. I'll say here network type required. Okay, and then we need to change the text appearance. I'll say @style text appearance that dot appcompat dot subhead. Okay, so I need to add here the text appearance dot appcompat. I'll delete this and I'll say here subhead. After this, we need to add the layout margin. I'll say 4 dp. Let's just preview this from here. So as you can see here, the network type required is now here. So after that, we need to add the below the text view, let's say a radio group. So I'll say here a radio group, and that we need to say width would be wrap content, height would be wrap content. Then let's say orientation would be horizontal. And after that, I need to add the ID over here. I'll say ID would be, let's say, network option. After that, I need to add the layout margin. I'll say 4 dp. Now using a radio group element ensures that the user can select only one of the element's children, which you define in the next step. Okay. And after this, we need to add the 3 radio button view as a child element inside the radio group. And for each of the radio buttons, we need to set the layout height and the width to the wrap content. So I'll say here the radio button. Let's say wrap content. I'll say here text. Let it be none. Then I'll say ID. Let's say ID would be no network. After that, I need to say checked is true. In the same way, we need to add the two more radio button. So I'll copy this radio button and I'll add it two more times. I need to change the ID and the text. So let's just change the text from none to any, and then ID to, let's say, from no network to any network. After this, I need to change here the text. Let's say text would be Wi-Fi, and then I'll change here from no network to Wi-Fi network. We need to delete these checked from the other two radio button, as only one radio button can be checked at a time. After this, add two button views below the radio group. For each of the buttons, you just set the height and the width to the wrap content. Okay. So after the radio group, I need to say button, and let's say wrap content, wrap content. Then I need to say here text. Let's say text would be schedule job. After this, I need to add the on click. I'll say here schedule job. Let's say layout gravity. What I'll say, let's say center horizontal. After that, I need to say the layout margin. Let it be 4 dp. In the same way, I need to add one more button. So I'll copy this and I'll paste it one more time over here. I need to change the text. Let's say from the schedule job to, let's say I'll change it to cancel job. Then we need to change the schedule job to, let's say, cancel job. And all the things would be same. After that, in the main activity, add a method for the stub for the on-click methods for each of the two buttons. So we know how to do that. I'll alt enter. I'll say create schedule job in the main activity. And then for the cancel job, I'll say alt enter and create cancel job in the main activity. Now, here in the main activity.java, in the schedule job method, find the radio group by ID and save it in an instance variable. Okay, so here I'll say radio group. Let's name it as network option. Is equal to find view by ID. Let's say r.id.network option. Then after that, we need to get the selected network ID and we need to save it an integer variable. So here I'll say int selected network ID let's say is equal to network option dot get check radio button. After that, we need to create an integer variable for the selected network option and set the variable to the default network option, which is, let's say, network type none. So I'll say here int selected network option is equal to JobInfo dot, let's say, network type none. In the job schedule method, create a switch statement with the selected network ID and add a case for each of the possible IDs. And in the job schedule method, also assign the selected network option the appropriate job info network constant depending on the case. So here I'll say switch, and inside that I'll say selected network ID. I need to pass the case over here. I'll say case r.id dot no network colon, then let's say selected network option is equal to the job info dot network type none. After this, I'll say break. Then we need to pass one more case. So I'll say it over here. I'll say case, let's say r.id dot any network colon. Then I'll say here selected network option is equal to JobInfo dot network type any. Then break. After this, I need to say here case r.id dot, let's say, Wi-Fi network. So I'll say here Wi-Fi network colon selected network option is equal to JobInfo dot network type unmetered. Semicolon. Then break. Then after this, we need to create a job scheduler and a job information object. So create a member variable for the job scheduler at the starting. Over here, I'll say private job scheduler and I'll name it as mscheduler. Then semicolon. Then inside the schedule job method, use the get system service to initialize the mscheduler. So here, after this switch statement, I'll say mscheduler is equal to the job scheduler, then get system service. Inside this, I need to say the job scheduler service. After this, create a member constant for the job ID and let's say set it to 0. So I'll say here private static final int. I'll name it as the job underscore ID and let's say it's 0. So inside the job schedule method, after the switch block, you need to create the JobInfo.builder object. So I'll say here add the required API. So the error has gone now. After this, we need to create the JobInfo builder object. So I'll say here the component name So I'll say component name. Let's say I'll name it as service name is equal to new component name basically the component name is used to associate the job service with the job info object. Okay, so the first parameter would be the job ID and the second parameter is the component name for the job service you created. Okay, so here inside this I'll say get package name comma the notification job service dot class dot get name. Then we need to say the job info dot builder and name it as builder is equal to new job info builder. Inside this we need to pass the job ID. Then let's say service name. Then call the set required network type on the JobInfo.builder object and pass in the selected network options. So I'll say here dot set required network type, that is this, and then I need to say here the selected network option. Then call a schedule on the job scheduler object that uses the build method to pass in the job info. After this, I'll say job info, my job info is equal to builder dot build. After this, I'll say mscheduler dot schedule. I'll pass that my job info inside that. Then you need to show a toast message letting the user know that the job was scheduled. So here I'll say toast dot make text. Inside this I'll say this comma, I'll pass the job schedule. I can write anything, let's say job schedule or job will run, let's say when. After this, and when the job will run, we need to say the constraints are met. Okay, then after this, what I need to say is the toast length. So I'll say here toast dot length short, and then I'll show the toast. So in the cancel job method, check whether the job scheduler object is null, and if not, then call the cancel all on the object to remove all the pending jobs, and also reset the job scheduler to null and show a toast to tell the user that the job was cancelled. So inside this, I'll say if mscheduler is not equal to null, then what we need to do is to say mscheduler dot cancel all, and then mscheduler is equal to null. Then we need to say the toast dot make text. Inside that I'll say this comma, the job cancelled, then I'll say the length, so toast dot length short, and then show. After that, you need to run the app. You can now set the tasks that have network restriction and see how long it takes for the task to be executed. Yeah, here's the double semicolon. So it also needs the API, so I'll say add required API here. Now the error has gone. After this, you can now set the tasks that have network restrictions and see how long it takes for the task to be executed. In this case, the task is to deliver a notification. To dismiss the notification, the user either swipes the notification away or taps it to open the app. You may notice that if you do not change the network constraints to any or Wi-Fi, the app crashes, with the exceptions that says the java.lang.illegal argument exception. Basically, you are trying to build a job with no constraint. This is not allowed. The crash happens because the no network required condition is the default, and this condition does not count as a constraint. To properly schedule the job service, the job scheduler needs at least one constraint. So in this section, you need to create a condition variable that's true when at least one constraint is set and false otherwise. So if the condition is true, your app schedules the task, and if the condition is false, your app shows a toast message that tells the user to set a constraint. So in order to check the constraint, the job scheduler requires at least one constraint to be set. So in this task, you create a boolean that tracks whether this requirement is met, so that you can notify the users to set at least one constraint if they haven't already. As you create the additional option in the further steps, you will need to modify this boolean so it is always true. if at least one constraint is set and false otherwise. So inside the main activity.java, inside the schedule job method, after the JobInfo.builder, what you need to say here is, and above the my job info definition, you need to create a boolean variable over here, and let's just call it constraint set. And then the variable is true if the selected network option is not the default. Basically, the default is the JobInfo.network type none. So I'll say equal to the selected network option, and then if this is not equal to the JobInfo.network type none. Okay. Then after the constraint set definition, we need to create the if-else block using the constraint set variable. So here I'll say if the constraint set and then inside that schedule the job and notify the user. So what you need to do is to move the code that schedules the job and shows the toast into the if block. Okay. So I'll cut this whole code from here and then I'll paste it inside the if condition. Better? Then after this, what I need to do that if the constraint set is false, then we need to show a toast message to the user telling them to set at least one constraint. And don't forget to extract your string resource. Okay. So here inside the else statement, I need to add a toast. So I'll copy this and I'll paste it over here. I need to change the text. Let's say text would be please select at least one constraint. So I'll delete the text and I'll say please set at least one constraint. Okay, then all that thing would be same. Then we need to implement the device idle and the device charging constraints. So using the job scheduler, you can have your app wait to execute your job service until the device is charging or until the device is in an idle state, that is the screen off or the CPU asleep. So in this tutorial, you add the switches to add your app to toggle these constraints on your job service. Now, in order to implement the device idle and the device charging constraints, using a job scheduler, you can have your app wait to execute your job service until the device is charging or until the device is in an idle state. So in this tutorial, you add switches to your app to toggle these constraints on your job service. Okay. So inside the activity main.xml, copy the text view over here and then I'll copy this text view. Then what you need to do is to paste it below the radio group. Okay, over here I'll paste it and then change the text to, let's say, require. So I'll change it to, let's say, require. Okay, then I need to change everything is fine after that. Then I need to what I need to do next is to add the horizontal linear layout after this text view. Okay, then I'll say here linear layout and let's say match parent and wrap content. Inside this I'll say orientation, let it be horizontal, and then I'll add the layout margin, let's say 4 dp. Okay, then you need to create the two switch views as a children to the horizontal linear layout. Set the height and width to the wrap content. Okay, but before that we need to see here that it's showing error that no orientation specified. So we need to specify the orientation over here. I'll say orientation, let's say vertical. Now you can see here the layout changes to something like this. So now I need to create the to switch. So I'll say switch, and then I'll say wrap content. Then inside this, I need to say the ID. Let's say ID would be idle switch. I need to say the text over here. Let the text would be device idle. Okay. After this, I need to create one more switch just like this. So I'll copy this switch from here and I'll paste it after this. I'll change the ID to, let's say, changing switch. So I'll say here the charging switch. I'll change the name to, let's say, device idle to device charging. Then we need to add the code for the new constraints. So after this, we need to go to the main activity.java and we need to create a member variable for switches. So we need to say here private switch. I'll name it as the device idle switch. Let's say mDevice idle switch. And in the same way for the charging switch, so I'll say private switch mDevice charging switch. After this, we need to initialize the variable in the onCreate. So inside the onCreate, what I need to do is to say the mDevice idle switch is equal to find view by ID r.id dot idle switch. Then for the mDevice charging switch is equal to find view by ID I'll say here r.id dot charging switch. After this, in the schedule job method, add the calls that the calls set the constraint on the JobInfo.builder based on the user selection in the switch fields during the creation of the builder object. Okay. So here, what I need to do here inside the set, I need to set some more, that is set required idle device. So I'll say here set required device idle, and I'll pass inside that the mDevice idle switch dot is checked. Okay. Then in the same way, we need to say for the set required device, set requires charging. So I'll say here set requires charging, and then inside that I need to say mDevice charging switch dot is checked, and then semicolon. So after this, we need to update the code that sets the constraint set to consider the new constraint. So I'll say here, I'll say the Boolean constraint set selected network option not equal to JobInfo.network type none. Then I'll add this line inside the bracket, and then I'll say the bracket over here. Then what I need to do is to say more options over here, and I'll say mDevice charging switch dot is checked. Okay, and then in the same way I need to say for the mDevice idle switch dot is checked, and then semicolon. Now run your app. Now with the additional constraints, try different combination of switches to see when the notification that indicates that the job ran is sent. So to test the charging state constraints in an emulator, what you need to do is to open the More menu and then go to the Battery pane, then toggle the battery status drop-down menu. There is currently no way to manually put the emulator in the idle mode. So for the battery insensitive tasks such as downloading or uploading large files, it's a common pattern to wait until the device is idle and connected to a power supply. Next thing, we need to see how to implement the override deadline constraint. Up to this point, there is no way to know precisely when the framework will execute your task. The system takes into account effective resource management, which might delay your task depending on the state of the device, and does not guarantee that your task will run on time. So the Job Scheduler API includes the ability to set a hard deadline that overrides all previous constraints. So we need to override the deadline. So in this step, you use a seek bar to allow the user to set a deadline between 0 to 100 seconds to execute your task. The user set the value by dragging the seek bar from left to right. So let's just go to the activity main.xml, and below the linear layout that has these switch views, here what I need to do is to add, that is, we need to create one more horizontal linear layout over here. I'll say linear layout, and then match parent, wrap content. Let's say orientation would be horizontal, and then I need to say the layout margin, let's say 4 dp. Then what we need to do is to give the seek bar two labels: a static label like the label for the group of radio buttons, and a dynamic label that updated the value of the seek bar. Okay. So this linear layout is for the seek bar labels. So after this, add two text views into the linear layout. So here I'll say text view, then width would be wrap content, height would be wrap content. Let's say text will be override deadline. Then I need to pass the ID. Let's say ID would be seek bar label. Then we need to add the text appearance over here. Let's say it would be text appearance.appcompare.subhead. After this, we need to pass the one more text view over here. So I'll copy this, and then I'll paste it one more time. I need to change the ID and the text over here. So ID, I'll say seek bar progress, and then the override deadline, I'll say to not set. The text would be not set. Then the text appearance would remain the same. We need to add a seek bar view below the linear layout. So I'll say here, after the linear layout, I'll say seek bar. Then I'll say the match parent and wrap content. I need to include the ID over here. I'll say ID would be seek bar. Then I need to include the layout margin. Let it be 4 dp. Then in order to implement this seek bar, we need to go to the main activity, the Java. And then inside this, we need to create a member variable for the seek bar. So I'll go in the starting of the main activity here, and we need to create a member variable. I'll say private seek bar. Let's say mseek bar. Then inside the onCreate, we initialize it. Then I'll say mSeekBar is equal to find view by ID r.id.seekbar. After this, in the onCreate, we need to create and initialize a final variable for the seekbar progress text view. So here I'll say final text view. Let's say seekbar progress is equal to find view by ID. I'll say r.id.seekbar progress. And then in the onCreate, we need to call the set on seekbar change listener on the seekbar. And we need to pass in new on seekbar change listener, as the Android Studio should generate the required method. Okay. So I'll say here the mSeekBar dot set on seekbar change listener. We need to pass here new seekbar dot on seekbar change listener. So as you can see here, the methods are automatically generated by the Android Studio. So the second argument of the onProgressChanged is the current value of the seekbar. And in the onProgressChanged callback, check whether the integer value is greater than 0, meaning a value has been set by the user. If the value is greater than 0, set the seekbar's progress label to the integer value, followed by S to indicate seconds. Otherwise, set the text view to read not set. So here I'll say if the I is greater than 0, then what we need to say is seekbar progress.setText. Seekbar progress.setText, and I'll say I plus, and here I'll say, after that inside the else block, I'll say seekbar progress.setText, let's say not set. Okay. Next, the override deadline should only be set if the integer value of the seekbar is greater than 0. In the schedule job method, create an int to store the seekbar's progress, okay? And also create a boolean variable that's true if the seekbar has an integer value greater than 0. So inside this, here, I'll say int seekbar integer is equal to mSeekbar dot get progress After this, we need to create a boolean variable, and let's say I'll name it as seekbar set is equal to seekbar integer if it's greater than 0. Okay. Then in the schedule job method, after the builder definition over here, if seekbar set is true, call the set override deadline on the JobInfo.builder and pass in the seekbar's integer value, multiply it by 1000. The parameter is in the millisecond and you want the user to set the deadline in the second. Okay, so I'll say here if the seekbar set, and then inside this I'll say builder dot set override deadline. I'll say inside this seekbar integer and I'll multiply it by 1000. Okay. Then we need to modify the constraint set to include the value of the seekbar set as possible constraint. So here inside the boolean constraint set, We need to pass the seek bar set after the M device idle switch over here. I need to say here the seek bar set, okay, and semicolon. So run the app and the user can now set a hard deadline in seconds by which time the job service must run. Okay, so thank you.